On a hot afternoon in December 1993, the streets of Medellin, Colombia filled with people. More than 25,000 of them. They cried, they shoved, they climbed over one another just to touch a single wooden coffin. The crowd was packed so tight that the dead man's own wife and children couldn't push through to reach the grave. Some of them were shouting his name like he was a saint. To this day, there are people in that city who still pray to him. Some light candles for him. Some believe he's looking down on them from heaven, keeping them safe. But here's the thing you need to understand. The man inside that coffin had once blown a passenger plane out of the sky. 110 people died. He had ordered the killing of judges, of police officers, by the hundreds, of the man who was about to become the president of the entire country. By the time he died, this one man was tied to the deaths of thousands. And for 2 years straight, the same city that was now weeping for him had been the most dangerous place on planet Earth. Because of him. So how does that happen? How do you kill thousands of people and still have 25,000 of them crying at your funeral? His name was Pablo Escobar. And the question people are still arguing about more than 30 years later is a simple one. This video looks at both sides of this man, and I promise you, both sides are going to surprise you. If you like stories that don't come with easy answers, do me one quick favor before we start. Tap that like button and hit subscribe, because digging into stuff like this is exactly what this channel is for. Okay, let's get into it. To understand why those people were crying, you have to go back about 10 years to a place most of the world never saw. In Medellin, there was a giant garbage dump called Moravia, and people lived there. Hundreds of families. Not next to the dump, they lived on it. They built shacks out of cardboard and plastic and scraps of wood right on top of the trash. They survived by digging through the garbage and selling whatever they could find. There was no clean water, no electricity. The smell never left. One woman who lived there still remembers covering her baby's bottles with pots at night so the rats and the cockroaches couldn't get to them. The government knew these families were there. For years, they did nothing. And then one day, a young, rich man showed up. He walked through the trash, looked at how these people were living, and he made them a promise. He was going to give them homes, real homes made of brick, for free. They wouldn't owe him anything. And he actually did it. He moved hundreds of families off that dump and into a brand new neighborhood in the east of the city. Some of the houses didn't even have doors or windows yet. It didn't matter. After years of sleeping on rotting trash, 4 walls and a roof felt like a miracle. The people were so grateful that they named the neighborhood after him. It still carries his name today. And the man who gave them those homes was Pablo Escobar. And this wasn't a one-time thing. He built soccer fields and put lights on them, so kids could play at night in places that had never even had a street lamp. He paid for hospitals. He sponsored the local football teams. He handed out cash in the street. To the poorest people in Medellin, he wasn't a criminal. He was the one person who showed up when no one else would. So they gave him a nickname. They called him the Colombian Robin Hood, the outlaw who took from the rich and gave to the poor. And it matched the story he told about himself. Escobar didn't come from wealth. His father was a farmer, and his mother was a school teacher. He'd grown up watching families struggle, and he'd built his fortune starting with almost nothing. So when the money came pouring out, a lot of people didn't see dirty drug cash. They saw one of their own. A poor kid who made it big and didn't forget where he came from. And here's how deep it runs. More than 30 years after he died, people still live in that neighborhood. Some of them still keep a small photo of him in their homes. They light candles for him. They call him a saint. Ask them about him and you'll hear the same thing over and over. Nobody else ever helped us. He did, and he never asked for anything back. At least, that's what it looked like. Because here's the question nobody in that neighborhood liked to ask. Where did the money come from? The houses, the hospitals, the soccer fields, the cash in the street. None of it came from a business. It came from cocaine. By the 1980s, Escobar was moving roughly 80% of the cocaine entering the United States. He was making millions of dollars a day, more than he could count or spend. So yes, he gave a lot of it away. But the giving was never really about kindness. Think about what that money actually bought him. Loyalty. In the poorest parts of the city, Escobar wasn't just liked, he was loved. And a man who is loved by thousands of desperate people has something close to an army. The same neighborhoods he lifted are where he found his killers. They were called sicarios, hitmen, and a lot of them were just boys, 13, 14, 15 years old. They came from families Escobar had fed and housed, and they worshipped him for it. One of them, a 15-year-old, told an American agent, "I will kill for him, and I will die for him. He took me out of poverty." The boy already knew he would never live to see 23. He said it like it was just a plain fact. So the kindness and the killing were never two separate things. They were the same machine. The drug money bought the houses bought the loyalty, and the loyalty gave him a never-ending supply of young men who would do anything he asked, including murder. And he asked for a lot of murder. Escobar had a rule. He called it plata o plomo, silver or lead. Take the bribe or take the bullet. If you were a judge, a police officer, a politician, or a reporter, you got that choice. Work with him or die. Plenty of people took the money. The ones who refused were hunted down. He put a price on the heads of police, $100 for every dead officer. To a teenage sicario, that was easy money, and more than 1,000 police officers were killed. And when the government finally came after him, he declared war on his own country, not as a figure of speech, a real war. For a stretch, his men were setting off 10 to 15 car bombs a day in shopping malls, on crowded streets. One was left outside a bookstore while parents and kids were inside buying supplies for school. He blew up the headquarters of the country's secret police with a truck full of dynamite. It killed more than 50 people, injured over 2,000, and flattened whole city blocks. He put a bomb on a passenger plane to kill one man who wasn't even on board. That man lived. The other 110 people on the flight did not. He had a candidate for president shot dead on stage in front of a crowd because the man had promised to send him to prison in America. He ordered the killing of judges, around 200 of them, justice ministers, reporters who wrote about him. And it wasn't all cold business. There's a recording an American agent held on to for years. On it, you can hear Escobar on the phone, telling his wife how much he loves her and misses the children. And in the background, very faintly, you can hear a man being tortured to death. By the time it was over, the number of people killed because of Pablo Escobar wasn't in the dozens or even the hundreds. The lowest serious estimate is around 4,000. The men who spent years hunting him believe the real number could be many times that. For 2 years, his own city, Medellin, was the murder capital of the entire world. So the people crying at his funeral were telling the truth. He really did give them homes. He really did change their lives. The trouble is, so were the thousands of people he left grieving on the other side. So which one was the real Pablo Escobar? The man who built homes or the man who built bombs? Here's the thing. That might be the wrong question. Ask a different one instead. Why was a drug dealer the person handing out houses at all? Where was the government? Those families on the garbage dump had been ignored for years. No water, no power, no help of any kind. The state that was supposed to look after them simply wasn't there. So when Escobar showed up with bricks and cash, he wasn't competing with the government, he was replacing it. For a lot of these people, he was the only government they had ever known. And the money behind all of it came from somewhere far away. Almost none of that cocaine was for Colombians. It went north into the United States, where millions of people could not stop buying it. He didn't create that hunger. He just got unimaginably rich feeding it. Now jump forward 30 years. Today you can buy his face on a t-shirt. His ranch is a theme park. He's the star of a hit Netflix show. The further you get from the blood, in time and in distance, the cooler he starts to look. That's how myths work. They sand a man down until only the exciting parts are left. But somebody always pays for that myth, and it's never the man on the t-shirt. If you want the most honest answer to all of this, it might come from the one person with the most reason to lie. Escobar had a son. He was 16 years old when his father was shot. He grew up inside all of it. The money, the fear, the running, a car bomb that nearly killed him when he was just a boy. And here is what that son says now, as a grown man who has spent years apologizing to his father's victims and fighting the way films make his dad look cool. He says his father was 100% guilty of everything he did. A killer, fully responsible, no excuses, and in the very same breath, he says his father was a warm, loving, wonderful dad. Both of those are true. That's the part we don't like. We want people to be one thing, good guy or bad guy, hero or monster. But the crowd crying at the funeral was not lying, and the families standing over all those graves were not lying either. Escobar really did pull hundreds of people out of a garbage dump, and he really did murder thousands more. Those facts don't cancel each other out. They just sit there side by side, refusing to make it simple. So after all of that, we end up right back where we started, with a simple question that turns out not to be simple at all. Was Pablo Escobar a good person? It's time to actually answer that. Okay, a real answer. No fence sitting, no. Pablo Escobar was not a good person, and it isn't close. But the reason why is more interesting than just counting up the bodies. Because here's the trap this question sets for you. It makes you feel as if you can find enough good deeds, they'll eventually outweigh the bad ones. Like it's a scale. Houses on one side, murders on the other, and whichever pile is bigger wins. That's not how being a good person works. A man who gives a family a home and also puts a bomb on a plane full of strangers is not a good person who made some mistakes. He is a dangerous man who also did some good. The good is real, it just doesn't buy back the lives. Think about what he actually chose, over and over for years, not once, not in a single moment of panic. Again and again, he decided that anyone standing in his way could die. Judges, police officers, a man running for president, strangers who just happened to be nearby. You do not get to make that choice thousands of times and still be called a good person because you were generous with the money you made along the way. So no, the answer is no. But don't walk away thinking those 25,000 people were fools. They weren't tricked into loving a monster. They loved a man who was genuinely kind to them. We all want the person who tucks his kids into bed at night to be incapable of ordering a massacre in the morning. Escobar's whole life is proof that it isn't that simple. Let's go back to where we started. That crowd, 25,000 people, crying in the street over a man who had spent years turning their country into a graveyard. When you saw this at the start of the video, it probably looked insane. Now you know why they were there. To most of the world, the man in that coffin was the most dangerous criminal alive. To the people in that street, he was the only one who ever gave them a home. Same man, same week, two completely different funerals happening in the same place. It's easy to look at those people and feel like you would have known better, that you'd have seen the monster clearly from the start. But if you had grown up on that garbage dump and one man pulled your family out of it when nobody else would even look at you, are you really sure you wouldn't have cried too? That's the real reason this story refuses to die. It was never really about him. It's about the uncomfortable fact that the side of a person you see depends almost entirely on where you happen to be standing. So I'll hand it over to you. If a stranger saved your family when the whole world had forgotten you, would you stop to ask where his money came from? Be honest with yourself, then tell me in the comments. I read them, and the answers to this one are never as simple as people think they'll be. And if you made it all the way here, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is built for. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.